Hi everyone, how are you today? Let's learn psychology with me. Today, let's learn about psychodynamic theories. We will talk about personalities based on psychodynamic perspectives. Let's get started. Let me share my screen with you. Let's get started. Personality from psychodynamic theory or psychodynamic perspectives. Here are some keywords from Sigmund Freud: free association, energy system, hysteria, catharsis, and unconscious. Free association means to allow thoughts to come without inhibition or falsification. By doing free association, we may discover hidden associations among ideas. Energy system, which is the body and mind, is the mechanistic energy system. The mind gets mental energies from the overall physical energies of the body. Hysteria. Hysteria is a conversion disorder because an emotional problem is transformed or converted into a psychological problem involving motor movement or perception. How about catharsis? Catharsis is a release and freeing of emotion by talking about one's problems. Unconscious. People are governed by unconscious ideas in their daily psychological life. Based on structure, there are conscious, preconscious, and unconscious parts. Conscious. Thoughts we are aware of at any given moments. Preconscious. Mental contents we could easily be aware of if we attend to them. For example, our mobile number. For example, when we are watching TV, we don't think about our mobile number, but when we are watching TV and someone asks for our mobile number, then we can, of course, just tell that person our mobile number because our mobile number is in our preconscious. We can easily remember our mobile number when someone asks us about our mobile number. Unconscious. Part of our mind that we are unaware and cannot be aware except under special circumstances. Traumatic and socially unacceptable thoughts and desires provoke anxiety. We want to protect ourselves from anxiety. That's why we force these thoughts to stay in the unconscious mind. Unconscious is highly motivated. Why is that? There are two reasons for that. Mental contents enter the unconscious for motivated reasons. Why? Well, traumatic events provoke anxiety. We don't want to have anxiety. We want to seek for pleasure and avoid pain. We want to protect ourselves from anxiety. Therefore, we banish these thoughts and emotions from the awareness. The second motivation, thoughts in the unconscious affects ongoing conscious experience. Thoughts, actions, feelings from conscious are affected by unconscious contents we are unaware of. According to psychological functions, Freud defines three things here, three parts: id, ego, and superego. What are the differences between these three things? Id seeks for pleasure, avoids tension. Id is unconscious. It wants gratification or pleasure. Let's go to the right side first. Superego. Superego is all about moral, rules, perfection. Ego is in the middle between id and superego. It's like the balance between id and superego. It wants pleasure, but at the same time, ego. Ego wants pleasure and avoid tensions too, but at the same time, ego also is aware of the rules. Ego is based on reality. We can see it this way. It wants gratification or pleasure. Superego aims for perfection, the moral. And ego in the middle is the reality. Remember, id, ego, superego. Ego is the middle, ego is the balance. It shows us reality, the reality. How about the process? Well, according to the process here, there are life and death instincts. Life instincts is associated with ego and sexual instinct. Life instinct drives people towards reproduction and preservation of the organism. Libido is the energy of the life instinct. How about death instinct? Death instinct is associated with the organism's drive to die or to return to an inorganic state. It seeks calmness. Sadly, many people escape psychological problems through a suicide, a drive to die. Death instinct turns away, then people can be or may be aggressive. It becomes aggressive instinct. The sexual and aggressive drives are a part of id. The dynamics of functioning. What happens to dynamic functioning in one's instinct? We can see here from the diagram, dynamic functioning in one's instinct can be expressed without modification, or it can also be temporarily be blocked from expression, or the object gratification of instinct can be replaced with another object. For example, the love of one's mother can be displaced to the love to wife, kids, or dogs, or other things. The dynamic functioning in one's instinct can also be expressed in a modified way. For example, affection. Affection is a modified expression of sexual instinct. Each instinct may be transformed, modified, and instincts can be also combined with one another. For example, football. It can be both sexual and aggressive instinct. Let's talk about Defense mechanism. Actually, there are many defense mechanisms. These are just some examples. Reaction, formation, sublimation, repression, rationalization, isolation, projection, denial. I've also heard other defense mechanisms, for example, intellectualization, fantasies, and some other stuff. I don't remember exactly now. Let's talk about what we have here. Reaction formation. Defend against unacceptable impulse by recognizing and expressing its opposite. It's rigid, exaggerated, inappropriate behavior. For example, in reaction formation, overprotective moms try not to allow conscious hostility towards their kids. Next, let's talk about sublimation. Sublimation is transformation. It's a transform socially unacceptable impulses to be more socially acceptable actions or behaviors. For example, if people tend to be aggressive, then instead of being aggressive the whole time, perhaps they can use sublimation strategies by playing football. By playing football, then they can be more accepted because they can perhaps express their expressions there while they're playing football. Though that's one of the examples for sublimation. Repression. As you know, repression means to repress people's thoughts and emotions. Rationalization. Rationalization, it's about trying to find an excuse or perhaps a logical explanation to something. People try to rationalize some things. Isolation. Isolate events in memory or isolate emotion from memory or impulse. Thoughts in conscious but no accompanying emotion. The result is intellectualization. We have talked about intellectualization. Intellectualization means when you are stressed, you try to use your intellect to deal with it. For example, someone may get a very negative result of his or her health check. Perhaps that person gets a very serious illness. Then instead of being depressed and stressed, that person looks for information in the internet, from the books, or that person asks for many suggestions and advice from the professionals to get help, to get more information. So that person means that person is using intellectualization to deal with his or her problem. Next, projection. It means project the negative qualities to others. For example, when someone is angry and sad, that person is saying to another person, "Why are you angry and sad?" Well, actually, it is this person, him or herself, who is angry and sad. Denial. What to deny? People sometimes deny traumatic events, socially unacceptable fact, or reality, threats, death, for example. Actually, there are positive and negative things about denials. The positive thing is that positive illusions about oneself, temporary relief from emotional trauma, avoid anxiety and depression. The negative side is that it can be a maladaptive, turn people away from reality instead of trying to fix the problem. We have now talked about defense mechanisms. As I said before, there are some other defense mechanisms as well. Here, it doesn't mean that it's something wrong. It is wrong to use defense mechanisms. According to one of my lecturers, it's okay to use defense mechanisms as long as you don't use the same defense mechanism all the time, because we also have to think, why do we use defense mechanisms? Because people want to defend themselves. They want to be free from anxiety. They want to fight for their self-belief, or they're in Swedish it's called self-bild, the picture of themselves. That's why sometimes people use defense mechanisms. Let's move on to growth and development. According to Freud, there are 5 development stages: oral stage, anal stage, phallic stage, latency stage, and genital stage. Here we can see the development stages: the early gratification, excitation and tension, and adult life. Let's start from the oral stage. Oral stage is from when people are still very little, from when they were born until they're about 1 year old. Let's see here. The early gratification, excitation on tension, for example, feeding, thumb sucking, other mouth movements of infants. In adult life, it can be chewing gum, smoking, kissing. Anal stage, 2 to 3 years old. Excitation in anus. Kids may associate bowel movement with losing something important, which can lead to depression. At the same time, it also means giving a prize or gift to others, creates feeling of power or control. Phallic stage, 4 to 5 years old. Genitals, that's the early gratification. Biological differentiation, men have penis, women don't. Then this creates castration anxiety, fear that he may lose his penis. There is also Oedipus complex in this phallic stage. Boys' fantasy to kill their dads and marry their moms. In this stage, there is also penis envy, female kids who don't have penis. Resolution of Oedipus complex happens through identification. Individuals take on themselves the qualities of another person and integrate them into their functioning. Kids identify their parents by having some values and morals. Then this is becoming the superego, as we have spoken before about. Superego, the conscious part. Latency stage. In latency stage, kids decrease of sexual urges and interests. Genital stage, kids experience the reawakening of sexual urges and interests. As you can see here, in latency stage, kids experience the decrease of sexual urges and interest, while in the genital stage, kids experience the reawakening of sexual urges and interest. Let's sum it up. There are 5 development stages: oral stage, anal stage, phallic stage, latency stage, and last, genital stage. Let's move on. Erikson has another idea. Here we can see Erikson's psychosocial stages of development. According to Erikson, stages of development include social concerns. Here we can see on the table on the screen Erikson's 8 psychosocial stages of development and their implications for personality. There are 8 here. Let's see. Number 1, basic trust versus mistrust, age 1 year. The positive outcomes are feelings of inner goodness, trust in oneself and others, optimism. The negative outcomes: sense of badness, mistrust of self and others, pessimism. This is what happens if kids don't get trusted. Psychosocial stage 2, autonomy versus shame and doubt. Happens in 2 to 3 years old. The positive outcomes: if kids get autonomy, then they will exercise of will, they will have self-control, they are able to make choices. The negative outcomes: if the kids don't get autonomy, they will be rigid, they may have excessive conscience, doubtful, and have self-conscious shame. Psychosocial stage 3, initiative versus guilt, happens when kids are 4 to 5 years old. The positive outcomes: if we give the kids initiatives that they need, then they will get pleasure in accomplishments, activity, direction, and purpose. They will have the feeling of purpose. But if they don't get the initiative, if we parents or adults don't give them initiatives, then they may have guilt over goals contemplated and achievements initiated. Psychosocial stage 4, industry versus inferiority. Age, okay, it's about latency. Do you still remember latency in Freud's stage that we talked about before? Latency. The positive outcomes: if we let kids to be industrious, then kids will be able to be absorbed in productive work, and they will also have pride in completed product. The negative outcomes: if they don't get to be industrious or feel that they can do it, then they may have a sense of inadequacy and inferiority and unable to complete work. Stage 5, psychosocial stage 5, identity versus role diffusion. Age, it's adolescence. Positive outcomes: if the adolescents gets to find out about their identity, then they have confidence. They will have confidence of inner sameness and continuity, and also a promise of a career. But if they don't get to explore their identities, they may feel confused, ill at ease in roles. They do not set standards, and they feel a sense of artificiality. Psychosocial stage 6, intimacy versus isolation. Early adulthood. Positive outcomes, mutuality, sharing of thoughts, work, and feelings. Negative outcomes, if they don't achieve their goals, then they may have avoidance of intimacy and superficial relations. Psychosocial stage 7, generativity versus stagnation. It happens in the adulthood, around 40 to 65 years old. What happens? Positive outcomes. If we have generativity, then we adults have the ability to lose oneself in work and relationships. Negative outcomes. If we don't feel like that, we may lose interest in work and have impoverished relations. Stagnation. The last psychosocial stage, integrity versus despair. It happens in the later years. The positive outcomes are the sense of order and meaning, content with self and one's accomplishments. Negative outcomes, fear of death, bitter about life and what one got from it or what did not happen. In summary, there are 8 psychosocial stages according to Erickson. These psychosocial stages are basic trust versus mistrust, autonomy versus shame and doubt, initiative versus guilt, industry versus inferiority, identity versus role diffusion, intimacy versus isolation, generativity versus stagnation, and last, integrity versus despair. All of these stages of development concerned about the social concerns. Let's move on. For identity statuses in identity formation according to Marcia. There are 4 identity statuses here. Identity achievement, identity moratorium, identity foreclosure, and identity diffusion. Let's start from the bottom. Identity diffusion, lack of any strong sense of identity or commitment. The people are vulnerable to their self-esteem, disorganized in their thinking, and have problems with intimacy. Identity diffusion is the stage when people probably are still confused of their identities. That's why they don't have a strong sense of identity or commitment. The next one is identity foreclosure. Committed to an identity without having gone through an exploration process. People in this stage or in this group are probably rigid, have high conformity to group demand, and sensitive to manipulation of their self-esteem. An example of this identity foreclosure is that parents who probably told their children that, okay, well, you are so smart, you should study physics or business or other subjects. The kids may not have explored all the other options, but then they tend to just want to make their parents happy, listen to their parents. Therefore, they just commit to take these subjects, for example, physics or maths or business at university. That means they have identity foreclosure. They commit to an identity without having gone through an exploration process. The next one is identity moratorium. In the middle of an identity crisis, people in the stage function at a high psychological level, but still struggle to find out about who they are. They are less prepared than identity achievers to make commitments. For example, perhaps people who want to change career, or some people who are not happy with their work or their studies, then they're looking for other options. They're in the middle of identity crisis. Oh, am I studying the right subject? Am I doing the right thing here? Am I really contributing to the community or to this organization? These questions actually are good, but then they also show that they're probably having an identity crisis. They want to find out who they are. The next one is identity achievement. Individuals have a sense of identity after exploring many options. These people function at a high psychological level. They have independent thought, complex moral reasoning, they have intimacy in personal relation, and resistance to group demands for conformity or group manipulation of their self-esteem. The identity achievement stage seems to be the best stage. But according to this theory in the other textbook that I have read, it's not like you go from identity diffusion, identity foreclosure, moratorium, and achievement. Sometimes people may go back and forward. For example, people might have been in identity achievement stage, but then when they move to another country, they may go through identity moratorium when they're looking for other ways or other things to do. So this is not like a fixed one. People may go through from one stage to the others and they may go back and forward. Let's sum it up. There are 4 identity statuses in identity formation according to Marcia. Identity achievement, identity moratorium, the middle of identity crisis, identity foreclosure, committed to identity without having gone through an exploration process, and identity diffusion, lack of any strong sense of identity or commitment. Let's move on. The development of thinking process, Freud. There are primary process thinking and secondary process thinking. The primary process thinking is the language of the unconscious. It's illogical and irrational. Reality and fantasy are indistinguishable. Dreams, for example, are also inside the primary process thinking. Secondary process thinking is the language of conscious, reality testing, logic. The secondary process thinking develops after kids have the capacity for primary process thought. It goes parallel with the development of ego. Remember ego, the balance between the id and the superego. Next, the development of thinking process by contemporary psychologists. They are experiential thinking and rational thinking. Let's look at the experiential thinking first. Experiential thinking is holistic, concrete, influenced by emotion. Used in interpersonal situations, is empathic and intuitive. That's why it's called experiential. Rational thinking occurs later in evolutionary development. It's more abstract, analytical. It follows logic and evidence. For example, it's used in solving mathematical problems. Rational thinking. There are some assessments to just check your psychodynamic personality. Psychodynamic personality assessments, for example, Rorschach ink blot test, thematic apperception test or TAT, as well as projective tests. Psychopathology. Here we need to see that fixation. What is fixation? Fixation is the failure in the instinct development during the developmental stages. What happens when fixation happens? Then we'll go through regression. Regression means going back to an earlier mode of satisfaction, an earlier point of fixation. For example, here we can see oral personality type, anal personality, and phallic personality. Oral personality type, if people have a fixation during the oral stage, then when they grow up, they may have problems with oral things. For example, smoking, drinking, or overeating. To explain it further, oral stage. So, for example, during the oral stage, so from 0 to around 1 year old, 1 or 2 years old, then the kids may not get enough food or they may get too much food. That means they have fixation, they have problems. Then when they are growing up, they have problems with these mouth-related movements, for example, smoking, drinking, and overeating. Anal personality. The anal character is a triad of traits. It has 3 things here: order lines and clean lines, stinginess and obstinacy. Order lines. Keep everything clean and in order. Stinginess. Holding on to things. For example, keep the important faces. Obstinacy. Against parting with stool, especially on command from others. Then the fixation here, people who have problems in the anal developmental stage may seek to have control and dominance over others. How about phallic personality? If successful for phallic men, they would say, I am a man. For women, they flirt, idealize life, their partners, romantic love, and surprised by life's ugly moments. According to this textbook about personality. The psychoanalytic theory of psychopathology. There is a conflict between a drive or wish or instinct and the ego's sense or anxiety that will be dangerous if the wish is expressed. The wishes date back from childhood, carried to adulthood, handled via defense mechanisms. These can lead to neurotic symptoms or psychotic withdrawal from reality. Here, let's move on. The therapeutic process, transference. What is transference? Transference is the development of attitudes toward an individual that are based on attitudes in earlier life toward significant others, especially parents. Why do we do this therapeutic process transference? By understanding the old conflicts, the needs for infantile gratifications, and recognition of the potential for mature gratification, understanding of old anxieties, and recognition of their lack of relevance to the current reality, then patients may progress toward maximum instinctual gratification within the limit set by reality and their own moral convictions. How do we do this therapeutic process transference? Patients express attitude towards the analyst that duplicate the attitudes they expressed earlier in life toward significant figures. Here I found another definition of transference from the internet. It's the redirection to a substitute, usually a therapist, of emotions that were originally felt in childhood, in a phase of analysis called transference neurosis. Transference. All right, let's move on. Here you can see a quite complicated diagram about theories. Actually, these are the theories of psychodynamic theories or psychodynamic perspectives. There are many kinds of theories. Let's look at these theories one by one. Here you can see Freud, Carl Jung, attachment theory, object relations theory, Adler's individual psychology or position, and the neurotic trends by Karen Horney. Let's start from Freud. We actually have discussed quite a lot about Freud's theories. We talked about the structure, the id, ego, and superego, the consciousness, conscious, preconscious, and unconscious, 5 stages of development, oral stage, anal stage, phallic stage, latent stage, and genital stage. Now let's talk about Carl Jung. According to Carl Jung, there are 3 levels here of consciousness. I write this in Swedish actually. Medvetandet means consciousness or conscious. Personlig omedvetet personal unconscious, and kollektivt omedvetet, collective unconscious. Let me repeat it. Carl Jung explains that there are conscious, personal unconscious, and collective unconscious. In collective unconscious, there are archetypes. What are archetypes? They are universal images of symbols that appear in, for example, fairy tales, dreams, myths, and psychotic thoughts. Let's talk about attachment theory. John Bowlby mentioned about ABS, attachment behavioral system, ABS, attachment behavioral system. Infants want to be close to the caregivers, especially when they feel that there are threats in the environment. Mary Ainsworth did research about strange situation. It shows that there are secure, anxious avoidant, and anxious ambivalent attachment types in children. Let's move on to object relations theory. There are three parts here: symbiose, games therapy, and therapy strategy. Symbiose. From symbiose to, okay, symbiose means that people want to transform themselves from symbiose to autonomy. They want to get autonomy. Games therapy by Melanie Klein. According to Melanie Klein, in the games therapy, these games are actually symbolic games. The games are therapeutic. For example, when kids draw something when they're playing, they're actually expressing their thoughts and their ideas and also their feelings and emotion by just drawing. Also, when people play games, we can also analyze them about their thoughts and feelings. This games therapy is therapeutic, according to Melanie Klein. There is also a therapy strategy by Heinz Kohutz. According to this therapy strategy, there are empathy, or this strategy uses empathy, mirroring, and transference, the positive form of transforming. Now let's move on to the next theory, Adler's individual psychology. His theory is based on position. According to Adler's, there are superiority and inferiority in his theory. Superiority means people have power, people have high position in the society, while inferiority is the other way around. People who feel that they have, people who feel inferior or they have inferiority want to get power. That means that they want to do something. Perhaps they can be aggressive. They want to be aggressive so that they can have more power, so that they can be more superior, have superiority in the society. The last theory about psychodynamic theory is neurotic trends by Karen Horney. According to these neurotic trends by Karen Horney, there are three things here: moving toward, moving against, and moving away. As far as I remember, moving toward means people want to move toward. So, for example, if I want to move toward other people, I feel that I love people. I love my friends. I want to shower them with love and care. I move toward my family and friends. Moving against means that I move against the other people. For example, moving against, I can remember a movie which Joker. I had to watch this movie for my presentation in one of my courses. Joker thinks that the world is crazy, everybody is so aggressive, and he was also bullied many times by people, and especially by strangers. Joker thought about that. So Joker thought everybody is not nice to him. Then, because he thinks that everybody is not nice to him, everybody bullies him, then he tends to be aggressive. He moves against the people. He's aggressive and he also does bad things. He moves against the people. The last trend or tendency is moving away. In this moving away tendency, people people move away from their community. They tend to withdraw themselves from their family and friends. In order to remember these theories, then the best thing that you can do is try to find some examples, perhaps from some movies or books that you have read, or even try to find some examples from your own life. By that way, then it will be a lot easier to remember these theories, because then you will be able to perhaps apply these theories into your life. Well, that's my PowerPoint presentation. Hopefully that helps you to learn more about personalities based on the psychodynamic perspectives or psychodynamic theories. It's quite complicated, a lot of theories. As I said before, the best way to remember these theories is to try to perhaps use these in your life or observe. Now that I have learned some of these theories, I try to analyze and observe my own behaviors as well as the people around me. That way I can try to remember these theories better. Well, thank you so much for learning psychology with me. See you next time.